And I have 7 o'clock, so I'll be ready.
Michael. There's Michael. There he is.
Good.
All right, Stone, ready when you are.
Good to go.
Thank you, sir. Good evening and welcome to the March 13th, 2023 meeting of the Town of Barnstable Planning Board. My name is Steve Robichaud. The Planning Board's public hearing this evening will be held at 7 p.m. by remote participation methods. Alternative public access to this meeting shall be provided in the following manner. The meeting will be televised via Channel 18 and may be viewed via the Channel 18 website at streaming85.townofbarnstable.us/cablecast public site. Real-time access to the Planning Board meeting is available utilizing the Zoom link or telephone number and meeting ID provided below. Public comment can be addressed to the Planning Board by utilizing this link or number and the meeting ID provided below. The link is townofbarnstable-us.j/832-303-68587. The phone number 888-475-4499 and the meeting ID again 832-3036-8587. Applicants, their representatives, and individuals required or entitled to appear before the Planning Board this evening may appear remotely and may participate through the link or telephone number provided above. Documentary exhibits and/or visual presentations should be submitted in advance of the meeting so they may be displayed for remote public access viewing. Application materials may be accessed by contacting Karen Herron at karen.herron@town.barnstable.ma.us or calling 508-862-4064. And at this time, we'll introduce our Planning Board members as well as town staff, starting with Bob.
Good evening, Bob Twist.
And Tim.
Good evening, Tim O'Neill.
And Steve.
Good evening, Stephen Costello.
And Mary.
Hi, everyone. Mary Barry.
And Michael.
Good evening, Michael Messinas.
And Ray.
Good evening, Ray Sexton here.
Thank you, Ray. And my name is Steve Robichaud again, and we have a full board this meeting. Now we'll introduce town staff. Jim.
Good evening, Jim Kupfer, Senior Planner, Planning and Development.
And Kate.
Good evening, Kate Maldonado, Assistant Director, Planning and Development.
And Karen.
Good evening, Karen Herron, Administrative Assistant, Planning and Development.
Great, thank you all. And notice of recording, this meeting is being recorded and broadcast on Channel 18 in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20. And I will now inquire to ask if anyone else is taping this meeting. And if you are, please make your presence known. Seeing none, we will call the meeting to order and start off with public comments. This is a general public comment section for public comment not related to any of our agenda items this evening. If your comment is related to an agenda item, please wait until that item is called to make your comment. And anyone for general public comment, please raise your hand and unmute, and you may go ahead. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our first item this evening, which is an A&R plan.
Yes, this is for the Roman Catholic Church of Fall River, who has submitted an approval not required plan entitled Plan of Land Map 210, Lot 89 and 89-1 at 97 Hayes Road, Centerville Village, Barnstable, Massachusetts, prepared for the Roman Catholic Bishop of Fall River, dated October 13th, 2020, and signed on February 21st, 2023, by Thomas Hardman, PLS, Site Civil CEC, Inc., in Dartmouth, Massachusetts.
Excellent, thank you, Mary. And this item is not a public hearing. Therefore, we do not need to open a public hearing for this item. And we'll start off with the applicant. Is there an applicant here to present? There you are. Take it away. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Carlos Sculte with Civil and Environmental Consultants representing the applicant on the project. Welcome any comments that you may have. This is a fairly straightforward approval not required plan of land, essentially consolidating two separate parcels into one essentially larger parcel. It meets all the square footage as well as the frontage requirements. Just fairly straightforward plan in front of you today. I'm happy to answer any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. And Jim or any other staff members, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I would add is we've reviewed the site and the plan, and we determined that there is adequate access to the site as there is a structure there now that achieves access.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Certainly look very straightforward to me. I don't have any comments or questions. We'll run down the board real quick. Bob, anything to add?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you, Bob. And Tim?
I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And Steve?
All set. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And Mary?
All set. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Mary. Michael?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And Ray?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
It must be straightforward. All right. We will look for a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion. This is Mary. I'll make a motion to approve the approval not required.
Second.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. And Mary, do you mind just reading it as it is on the annotated? Do you have that in front of you?
Yes, I'm sorry. So the motion is to endorse the plan entitled Approval Not Required Subdivision of Land at Map 210, Lot 89 and 89-1, which is 97 Hayes Road, Centerville, Mass., prepared for Roman Catholic Bishop of Fall River by SITEC, dated October 13th as Approval Not Required Plan.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary.
Sure.
And Steve, was that you on the second?
That was me on the second. I second that.
Excellent. Thank you. And all those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. And the matter passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate all your attention.
Great. Have a good night. And next up, we have regulatory agreement, Shoestring Properties. Steve?
We have a regulatory agreement. Shoestring Properties LLC seeks to enter into a regulatory agreement with the town of Barnstable to construct 34 condominium units in 2 buildings with associated improvements at 110 School Street and 115 School Street, Hyannis. The redevelopment consists of 22 3-bedroom units and 12 2-bedroom units. A total of 70 parking spaces will be provided. Majority of members present and voting. This is a continuation from August 8th, 2022, in order to form a subcommittee, and continued from September 26th, 22, October 3rd of 22, October 24th of 22, November 14th, December 12th of 2022, January 23rd of 2023, and February 13th of 2023. And this is a public hearing that remains open.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. And a reminder, this is for the majority of members present and voting. We have a public hearing already open, and I will provide a quick update on this process and kind of how it has evolved. I believe the first hearing was in August, so certainly have taken a long and thorough review with this. We did send the item to a subcommittee. That subcommittee was made up of 5 members, 2 from this board, 2 from town council, and 1 from housing. The subcommittee heard from a few town departments such as conservation, DPW, fire, the big ticket items, issues that came up were height, density, parking, affordables, and access on School Street. 2 significant concessions kind of took place from the applicant throughout the process. The height was reduced from 5.5 stories to 4.5 stories, and the affordable units off-site were increased to 5 3-bedroom units. We've also heard a lot from the public, both in these meetings and through correspondence, and all of that is on the record. Attorney Kenny, I'll turn it to you if you have any comments to add.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of Planning Board. For the record, John Kenny, an attorney on the law office in Centerville, representing Shoestring Properties. Here with me tonight is Patrick Nickerson from my office, Mr. Bornstein, and Dan Ogeler. And I don't know if any of the guys from Janap Architects have joined us. I didn't see them earlier, but one significant thing I wanted to point out, I know when Mr. Costello read in the advertisement, it's the original advertisement. We've also reduced the number of units from 34 units down to 29 units on site. So it's a 29 unit project now, 18 3-bedroom units and 11 2-bedroom units. So there's been a reduction of 5 units. 4 of those 5 are 3-bedroom units. There was no change in the parking. And other than that, we've heard, I think, as much as we could possibly hear on this project. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know a couple of the board members were not able to attend the last meeting. If they have any questions for us, we'll be glad to answer them. But other than that, I think we're ready for a vote.
Thank you, Attorney Kenny. And I do.
And the only other comment, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, if you do go back to the public for comment, the last time you would caution people to make it new public comment, and several people read into the record the same things they've said for the last 4 or 5 meetings. I think I counted as we're reading off the continuances. This is like the 8th and 9th meeting. And we've heard the same thing ad nauseum. Everybody knows where everybody stands. If there's going to be further public comment, please limit it to new public comment or stop it, please.
Understood, and I do agree with you on that, and I will make a statement on that now. The public comment this evening is going to be for new members of the public who have not previously made comments. Everybody that has had a chance to speak before has had their time to speak, and those comments are on the record. And I do see some new faces in here this evening, so hopefully we will have some new public comment, which we very much look forward to. And I do agree with you, Attorney Kenny. We are ready for a vote, and I do seek to hopefully get a motion on this before the close of the meeting. I would like to start with board questions. Some members were not present at previous couple meetings, and I want to give them a chance to ask any questions they have. I'm actually going to lead it off with a couple questions myself. Wanted to just center my questions on 310 Barnstable Road. So that site obviously is connected to this project as it will house the offsite affordables. Attorney Kenny, was the need for those offsite affordables the catalyst for the proposed redevelopment of 310? And the second question would be, if this dockside project does not go through, will that put the 310 project in jeopardy of not taking place?
I'd say it was a catalyst. I know Mr. Bornstein had talked to a couple of other potential developers about redeveloping that site. Some were looking at converting to housing, some at office. But as this project progressed, and after we met with the subcommittee, Hilda Hay from the Housing Committee made it clear that they wanted some units, and in particular, they wanted 3-bedroom units. So Mr. Bornstein, having control of this site, was able to offer 5 3-bedroom units. So I wouldn't call it the catalyst. Whether or not that project will go forward, it may or may not. But excuse me, it certainly wouldn't be with 5 3-bedroom affordables if it does move forward. And I apologize for my wheezing. My allergies have been kicking up this week and can't get rid of the cough.
No problem. I appreciate those comments. And just so I have the numbers right, am I correct in stating that 310 Barnstable will have 30 total units, of which 5 will be affordable for dockside and 3 will be affordable for the 310 Barnstable Road requirement? Do I have those numbers right?
Correct.
Say approximately 30. Stuart, go ahead.
Yes, there will be 30 units. And to get to the 5 3-bedrooms, we had to refigure the whole building. We made a lot of our other units that were 2s and the 1s and a lot smaller. and they'll be rented for a lot less. We'll have some units in there. We'll have a total of 8 affordables, but we'll also have some market rates in there for as little as $1,200. One bedrooms, probably as many as 3 or 4 more. But we're doing this as a community thing. On it, so it's going to be a all brand new. Everything's first class, and it's all gutted out. We've already pulled the permit to do it, but if we don't have the dockside, we'll go back to the configuration, and it'll have 3 affordables and not the 5. The 5 is taking a lot out of this building. The larger units and the 3 bedrooms, very expensive to build. They all got 2 bedrooms, larger kitchens. So there'll be a total of 8 units, plus 3 or 4 more units that I'm not going to call them affordable, but they'll probably be in the same price as the affordables. So there might be almost 12 or 13 of them will be affordable. So it's really a big benefit. And we recognize the need. We have 100 people help, and we subsidize a lot of the apartments for our help. So we understand that more than anything.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I also wanted to note, after we closed our subcommittee hearings, we did receive correspondence from the applicant with floor plan drawings of 310 Barnstable Road. And Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are on the website as well with all the materials?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, appreciate it. Well, thank you. I just wanted to ask those questions about 310 Barnstable Road. There's been a lot of talk about the affordables, and wanted to ask that. So why don't we just go through the board real quick and see if we have some questions we want to take care of before we go to the public. Bob?
Yeah, no, I caught up on the meeting that I missed a couple of weeks ago, and I don't have any further questions.
Great, thank you, Bob. And Tim, any questions at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I had a few questions related to 310, but I think you hit them, and I heard the answers given. So those answered my questions. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Steve?
No, I'm all caught up as well. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, great. And Mary?
All set. Thanks, Steve.
Excellent. Michael?
I am all set. Thank you.
All right. And Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just trying to do math here, and with regard to the affordable units. So if the 310 project is 30 units, that means that a minimum of 3 have to be affordable. And if we're with the dockside project, now with it's reduced to the 29, it's Paso Menos 3 as well. But we've sort of been in our discussions and what have you with an understanding that there were 5 affordable units that were being made available for the dockside. Now I'm starting to do my math and saying, well, I'm not sure that that's actually the case. If there were going to be 5 for the dockside and there would be 3 required at 310 anyway, that math doesn't add up. Now, maybe, as Mr. Bornstein said, he's going to have affordable rates at the market price, but if we're actually going to have deed limited affordable units, if we're kind of getting our numbers straight, shouldn't it be more like 8 units?
That's correct. There is 8 affordable units.
Okay.
5 of those are going to be 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And the other 3 will be divided up between 1s and 2s.
Oh, okay.
There's a total of 8.
Yep.
Plus, because of the configuration to get the 5 3 bedrooms, some of the other units went down a little bit in size. So in frankness, we figured those prices are going to be, I haven't got them hard yet, but probably in the area of $1,000 to $1,200. They're not affordables. They're just the size is what we're going to try to rent them for. So there may be as many, there's 8 guaranteed, no matter what. And there'll be another 3 or 4 that'll be close to the affordable prices.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Bornstein. That straightens that out. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Ray. I appreciate that. And now off to public comment. And again, just to reiterate, this is new public comment. Stone, are you on, and do you have an order you'd like to use for this?
I have 3 individuals that identified themselves prior to the meeting. I've renamed them. So if you'll see on the participant list, Public, School Street, they're ordered there. And then I believe also Susan Truitt has her hand raised.
Oh, perfect.
So first
Okay.
up, we have Deborah Dagwood. This is my first up.
Perfect. Deborah, please unmute and take it away.
Thank you, planning board. As a town councilor, I took a pledge to adhere to certain responsibilities. As president of the council, I voted and approved many planning board members, which includes some of you. Developers in the town, I find often do not listen to the villagers. They listen to the residents. They listen to me as a councilor. They listen to the directors in the town, the managers, planning board members, etc. You have a tough job to do. I understand that. It's a really tough job. But they really need to take the time to listen to the people who have lived here. And we've had some developers do that. I give credit to Mr. Brennan, who's done a project here. He's a developer. He spoke to the people. So they got a better understanding of how they felt. Also, I don't know the gentleman's name, but who is constructing the project out near the Wilkinson Center. Another one did plenty of adjustments to work with the residents, listen to what they had to say, and he made many adjustments. I speak as an abutter tonight to this developer, as well as someone who saw the project in 2013, the very first project. And I was so excited that we are finally, and I was very proud that this developer was going to put affordable housing at this harbor with this project. Beautiful, wonderful. I thought it was such a great thing. Although Councilor Rapacetti and I were invited to see the project at that time. And we had some concerns, which are still here, height, density, all of that was on. The project didn't go anywhere. It hasn't gone anywhere now, and here we are, 2023. If the project, it didn't go anywhere because of the same issues, The project has changed numerous times, including tonight. I'm hearing something that I hadn't heard before. Hyannis Harbor is special, and it belongs to the citizens. The developer has a harbor in his village, which Ann Kennedy, who was the counselor, did a wonderful job listening to the residents and got the bulkhead repaired. I remember she invited me to when the governor came. I feel terrible as an experienced counselor for so many years and president of the council that I'm not listened to. When they gave away these affordable units and decided to put them on the outside or someplace else, I spoke up at that time and said, the residents deserve better than that. I would love to see some villager from the village of Hyannis. We have a lot of retirees here who would love to sell their homes to a young family, keep them here, and have an opportunity to downsize and live in one of those affordable units at the harbor. Harbors that they've paid their taxes towards to dredge it, walkway to the sea. We spent money doing that. We voted for those kinds of things. I'm just asking tonight, and I'm not here to put down any of you because I know this is a tough job. I appreciate what you do, but I'm asking you to please listen. Let's not rush this through. It's been 10 years. Let's not rush. Let's look at this again. And as Tom Brady says, do your job. I had to do my job as a counselor. There were laws and regulations that we had to follow. I appreciate you. We want to work together. It's not an I, it's a we. We work together and that we not push this through. I believe that what a person says, mean what you say what you mean. As an abutter, I've seen a project this next to me that was a beautiful project by this same developer, and I was a cheerleader for this developer to put the Walgreen in at the airport. I was the #1 cheerleader for this developer. So I'm for the developer. I'm for developers here. And I had a lot of councilors who were against that, putting that Walgreen at the airport rotary. But I convinced a lot of them to approve it. And I had a reason for that. And now's not the time to talk about it. But if anybody wanted to know, I'd be glad to share. We have to consider, and I'm speaking on behalf of the villagers. I represent a lot of people here, and I'm going to shut up because I know, you're here. But I'm asking you not to approve this tonight. Give us time. We waited this long. Let's get it right. We only got one harbor. It's a precious harbor. It's an educational harbor. I see what our civic association does every year for the Christmas boat parade. I come out on the boat with Santa. We're on the fireboat. And every year, I don't care how cold it is, the event the Civic Association puts on, we turn that corner, the Santa and myself, I judge the boats that are decorated. And I'm amazed of how many people, I don't care how cold it is, if it's raining, how many families are out there as we circle that harbor that come down and appreciate that, how many of them are there. Listen to the people. Give us a chance. There is a bill right now that is looking at, and I'll shut up after this, that's looking at discrimination based on housing and affordable housing. It's Senator Sears as well as Representative Moran. I was at the State House this morning on equity for women, sitting in on a project there. So I'm knowledgeable, and I appreciate that people respect that. As a longtime counselor here in the village of Hyannis, and family's been here over 100 years. I mean, it's just a lot. It's our harbor. Please listen to us. And please respect me as a town council here for many, many years. And that I do have some expertise and I do know what I'm talking about. And I'm not against this developer, but I've had experiences and I'm done. I don't want to go on and on because I get emotional about it, and other people want to speak, but thank you for listening. Please hold this project and give us a little more time to get everything the way it should be. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. I appreciate that. And I'm just looking for number 2, Stone. Who was number 2?
Felicia Penn.
Okay, Felicia, go ahead, unmute.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. I'm going to make my comments very short. I just wanted to respond to a comment that the bid made at the last hearing, and that is that, this is what Main Street needs. And I just think that what Main Street needs to thrive is year-round housing, that more second homes at peak season is not what's needed. It only exacerbates the seasonality of the economy on Main Street is not what we want to do. And I would also echo, you've heard all my other comments. I won't aggravate Mr. Kenny by repeating any of that. I just want to indicate that I support Ms. Dagwan's comments tonight about your role of the planning board, which is to apply, defend, and implement the village zoning. We count on you to uphold it. So thank you very much for that. I'm done.
Thank you, Felicia. I appreciate that. And Stone, let's see, number 3.
Carol Powell.
Cheryl, you can unmute and go ahead.
I have done. Thank you, and good evening to everybody. I am going to be speaking very briefly as well, more on precedent and procedure. And I want people to know that I am all for developers as well and business. But I agree with Deb Dagwan. We need to do it right. We need to get it right. And a little more time. I'm also going to be careful. I know I've said this before, but I feel I need to repeat it, that I am not going to go into the whole bit of it, because if it does come back to the HHDC, which we don't know, I don't want to have to recuse myself. So I won't speak to the actual bits, because that hasn't been, the new bit has not been heard to us. I would refer to section, however, 112 of our ordinance -29 on the commission jurisdiction. And that is on part A, that except as this article may otherwise provide, no building, structure, setting, or part thereof within the district shall be constructed, demolished, moved, or altered in any way that affects the exterior architecture or feature subject to public view until the commission first have issued a certificate of appropriateness. The other part is no building be constructed, any part of the structure or alteration of any exterior architecture within the district which is subject to public view issued by the town or any department thereof until certificate of appropriateness, certificate of non-applicability, or certificate of hardship has been issued by the commission. Now, what I would like to do is to just point out, as I said, I agree with Deb Dagwan. I have an immense well of respect for her, but I also want to point out that a precedent had been set previously where things had to come back to the HHDC. I would argue by Mr. Bornstein's own words, stated at 14 minutes into this, at 7:14 tonight, 14 minutes into this, that we had to, I'm quoting here, we had to refigure the whole building. What you have before you is no longer what came before the commission for approval. And I would argue, although it would have to have legal, review on it, that what you have before you has not passed historical. I keep getting messages from people saying that the planning board is saying, well, it passed historical, so therefore it's got to be it. But this is not what passed historical. I'm not saying it's good and I'm not saying it's bad. That would be wrong for me to comment on that just in case it does come back. And I always appreciate any applicant trying to work with the town, with the commission, or any public body to try to, make it more acceptable. But that is a direct quote from Mr. Bornstein tonight. New information.
That's wrong.
We had to refigure the whole building.
That is wrong. It's
Yeah, I do just want to clarify that statement was in regards to 310 Barnstable Road.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Okay, but they still refigured everything else. They refigured with the facade. They refigured with it's still, the whole application is not what came to us, and I would therefore urge that it came back just to keep it squeaky clean for consideration for all the different changes that have come, because that is not what the HHDC approved. I think everybody knows I have a reputation of ensuring that we try to make everything fair and square and everything. But there are significant changes. And as I said, I don't think that's what was approved. I want to thank people for their time. And that is my opinion without stating more, which would be inappropriate because I don't know. I haven't heard the entirety because I want to be able to hear fresh. Okay? Thank you so much and a good evening to everybody.
Thank you very much for that public comment. Appreciate it. And Stone, before we continue, do you see anybody, I think you mentioned someone with their hand raised.
And now we have 3 virtual hands raised. Susan Truitt, Marty Vermel, and David Lawler. Susan is up first.
Okay, Susan, go ahead and unmute. Take it away.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. I live in Osterville, but I care very much about what happens in Hyannis. I have lots to say. I'm extremely negative about this project, but I think it really, hearing what others have to say, I think it boils down right now to timing. On February 2nd, the town council passed a whole new look for zoning in Hyannis with a set of values that are pretty clearly expressed and not by this proposal. This proposal has none of the characteristics of the proposal for 7 different kinds of districts in the downtown area of Hyannis. Now, I understand that the Hyannis Harbor area is not part of the most advanced thinking because of the nature of where it starts right now. But this is so far from the set of values expressed by the overarching principles of what the town council passed. I can't, even if you pass it tonight, I can't envision that the town council could see it as in tune with the overall principles they've established to recreate a healthy economy in downtown Hyannis. Now, I want to read to you what I think is pretty closely exactly what Elizabeth Jenkins said when she was explaining the limited purview they have at the moment over Hyannis Harbor. That particular district they recognize as a hybrid district that isn't going to follow all of the grand plan. But she said, we talked a lot about the Hyannis Harbor district in this process and why it didn't go further. And we all agreed a much more comprehensive study should be done about land use and building form in a comprehensive plan overall for the Hyannis Harbor district. In other words, this, just a little over a month ago, she herself said that there wasn't a real plan. The entire evening was spent talking about the utility of a comprehensive view of what needs to happen. And I may not have absolutely every word accurate, but if you wonder what she said, it's at about 3:21 on the tape. I'm not good at transcribing somebody, but this is what she said. So I ask you, and the woman who just spoke, whose name I don't know, also talked about the timing is wrong. I'm against the project under any circumstances. I think that Deb Dagwan has it right. This has this particular space is essentially ripe for being an open space for people to enjoy. All those people who are living above stores need a place to walk to. And what about underground parking? Excuse me? The hospital right next door is having trouble with water and had to move a lot of things out of their basement because they see climate change coming. I'm not sure underground parking is appropriate for that location. And how many people who buy apartments that may cost several $1 million want to hear ambulances right outside their door, especially in the summer? I don't say anything good about this project. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate your comments. And Marty, take it away.
Good evening. I'm Marty Bermeldi, President and CEO of the Greater Hyannis Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I've been authorized to read the following statement. The Greater Hyannis Chamber of Commerce wishes to support the project proposed by Mr. Bornstein of Shoestring Properties. The Chamber supports well thought out and sustainable modifications to zoning and planning that will help the future growth of Hyannis. We need to foster residential and commercial growth. That's a statement on behalf of the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marty. Appreciate that. And Attorney Lawler, of course, just trying to keep it to new comments. Thank
I'll
you.
keep it under a minute. I just want to thank everybody for the amount of time you've put into this. It's been incredible. And all I want to say is that I hope you received my letter that I forwarded today. And if you do intend to approve this, I do ask that you debate the issue of the moratorium. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Attorney Lawler. I appreciate that. And yes, your letter was read and received into the record. Appreciate that. And John Julius, take it away.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you. You know, I've been a resident of this town for a long, long time, spent a lot of nights over at Town Hall speaking before various town councils. I've spoken on all kinds of various subjects, and I have some huge concerns. Tonight, I may let my concerns a little bit, and I'll tell you why. I have some serious concerns about this meeting tonight, and I'll explain why. You know, it's patently unfair for people out here in our general public tonight that maybe they don't have a computer. Maybe they're having glitches, like I had a couple sitting here in the last hour or 45 minutes, whatever it is. This is patently unfair to be having this kind of a meeting where myself or anyone else has to stare into a foolish computer screen. I guess some people along the way must have missed the memo that COVID is over now. And I, quite honestly, I'm incensed, if you will, for lack of a better word. I'm insulted that I can't come before you as a governing body and stand there at a podium in public, in person. I said these same sentiments about 4 or 5 weeks ago to the subcommittee from the Cape Cod Commission. They could have cared less. And what I said to them was, do you want to face the possibility and the risk that somebody after the fact comes and files a lawsuit? And I'll tell you what, in my day here, not that I like it, because it's the last thing in the world I like, but I've filed lawsuits, even myself in person. I've done it pro se. I don't like to do it. It costs money, wastes a lot of time. I'm not going to sit here and threaten any of you about a lawsuit, but I'll tell you what, there exists a very distinct possibility that that could happen, because if I'm correct, and somebody here can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I read a clip in one of the local papers recently in which it said that your board has an in-person meeting on the 27th. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. That is accurate.
Well, then why in God's name would you want to continue with this meeting and run that risk that somebody comes in after the fact and says, wait a minute? Because I'll tell you what, and this has nothing to do with the merits. There are some things here probably with this development, and I know the applicant personally. I'm not doing or saying anything here to make any misery on him or yourselves for that matter. But think about it. Think about the risk that all of you are taking tonight. If I were an applicant sitting here, I'll tell you what, and somebody brought this to my attention, I would have some grave concerns. So I think you should do the right thing and the honorable thing and table this meeting to allow the general public to get in our vehicles, come down, stand there in person, and express our sentiments. And I'll tell you what, if I have the opportunity to do that, yeah, then I will. Because I have some real serious concerns about this, but I'm not all that comfortable. I sell real estate for a living. I'm tired of these Zoom meetings. They make no sense to me at all. And like I said, it's an insult to the public. These Zoom meetings, the governor, to my knowledge, these are going to expire on March 31st. So why wouldn't you, for the next 2 weeks, simply just table this vote? And if you don't, remember, you will run that risk. And if I were a board member sitting there, I'd be closing the books right now. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Sorry I got passionate, but I'll tell you what, this is wrong in every way that known to man. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I will respond. This meeting has been posted, scheduled, and scheduled as a remote access meeting. So we're going to continue to hold it as a remote access meeting, and our next meeting will be in person. Laura Cronin.
Yes, good evening. I guess I was a little confused at the beginning. Thanks again for keeping this public comment open for this particular project. I was a little concerned about if people have spoken before that you weren't allowing us to speak at public comment, which it appears that you are.
Yes, for new comments, for new comments, yep.
Well, yeah, but that's okay then. It's hard to do that because when you think of this project and it's evolved and how it's evolved and where all of us have been trying to follow this through the Zoom meetings and such, it is difficult because it feels like the questions that we've had before that you have on file, that you have on record, aren't answered. And I don't know whether that's because you're waiting for the end of it to go through all of them independently and answer us individually, or whether or not they're ever going to get answered. And I think as a member of the public, it would be kind of important to know if we had answers to some of those things. It might either alleviate some concerns or it might raise somebody else's concerns that were originally in favor, or may bring out some more questions. So people can read what people have written before, people can watch the previous meetings, but we don't have answers to the precedent that's being set there. We don't have answers as the planning board, that someone said it very well tonight, that we rely on you to follow the count on the zoning and following it. And regulatory agreements are necessary, they're important, but when you're dealing with the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront and Historic District, in Hyannis especially, it's kind of concerning when it gets this far into the process without it being stopped or reconfigured down to the zoning that it is now. And someone brought up this evening that this whole new zoning, which was great, that they did an amazing job in trying to promote and bring in new development downtown Hyannis, but also in the town of Barnstable. And nothing was touched with the waterfront district or historic district. So I think that right away tells you that, no, there was no intent in doing that. And there's a reason for that. This is the number of units per density is just high for this area. Otherwise, you don't have controlled growth. You don't have a way of making sure that you maintain the character and characteristics of the village. Hyannis has got challenges all on its own. And this listening to the people or listening to the zoning department, the planning department, come up with these new zones and regulations and say, no, this was not something we wanted to do. We did not, they had an opportunity to consider it. We bring the hospital in every now and then to talk about it, but it's not apples and apples. And so I would reiterate what Ms. Dagwan said earlier as well. And everyone that has spoken against that, this is a zoning issue. There's something that should be considered, and that we're counting on you as a board to maintain that character and to maintain that for the town of Barnstable, especially for the village of Hyannis. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. And I see one more, Denise Johnson. You can unmute and. Denise,
Yeah, okay, now I'm unmuted now. I'll introduce myself in two ways. I'm a very senior marketing person in commerce and in my career, and I am a member of the zoning board. And I have a couple of concerns that we have a set of pretty stringent zoning board regulations. I mean, we make people wait weeks because they're 10 feet over the setback, or because they want to put a swimming pool that isn't consistent. I don't understand the basic principle of just the planning board creating new zoning without any of the public's input. We have a set of zoning and we uphold it at every meeting. And now it seems like, I don't even know why you have a zoning board if you're going to keep reassembling the zoning guides every time a developer comes in. The second thing is, I don't see any justification that 32 high-end units on the harbor are going to bring commerce to downtown Hyannis. This is going to bring more tourists? No. Is this going to make those of us who do like going to the harbor happier to be there? I mean, I don't think the planning board is thinking about the people who live here, who pay taxes, and who are homeowners. I am all in favor of having more homeowners, but I don't think 32 high-end million-plus condos is going to change the economy of downtown Hyannis. I have pleaded with people to start talking about the issues related to homelessness and drugs in downtown Hyannis. And I can tell you with authority, that is why people going to Nantucket and all the other people passing through this town do not see it as a great destination. And why we think putting in 32 high-end or whatever the number is, condos to block the harbor for the rest of the people is a great solution. I go back to what Felicia Penn said in an earlier meeting. It isn't about what building to put there or how many units there are. Are we ready to take away the harbor view and the open space for the rest of the community to create a very high-end condo unit? And I think that's what the council should be thinking about, and representing the people who pay the taxes and who are citizens of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Appreciate that. At this time, we have worked through all of our public comment. I'll just take one more look to see if there's anybody else that would like to make public comment. You just make your presence known at this time. And seeing none, I seek a motion to close the public hearing.
Kevin, can I have an opportunity to respond?
Sure.
I'll start with former Councilor Dagwan, since she was the first to speak. And she said the developer does not listen to the residents. Well, she doesn't speak for all the residents. And the last speaker, also the member of the zoning board, I think it was Ms. Johnson, Denise Johnson. She doesn't see how this will bring commerce to downtown. Well, Mr. Bornstein has met with the Hyannis Chamber of Commerce. They support it. He's met with the BID. They support it. They're going to support it because it's going to bring commerce downtown. You're putting high-end people downtown. As far as the drugs and the homeless and all of that, the more residents you put into the east end of Hyannis, the more services they'll demand, and it will help drive out some of those problems. One of the reasons my client wants to take this restaurant down is it's vacant during the winter. He has all kinds of problems with homeless, living under the deck, breaking into the building, etc. I've kind of been over that. But to say he hasn't listened to the citizens is clearly wrong. The early design that she talked about was a modern design. It wasn't well received. He's redesigned it into a beautiful maritime-looking building. To suggest that we put the affordable housing in this project, it's not economically feasible. The infrastructure to build this project with the underground garages, the elevators, and the beautiful design, you simply can't afford to put the affordables in there. So he's offering more to put them off site. As far as Mr. Julius is concerned about tabling the vote, your vote is merely a recommendation to send this project to the town council. It's not a binding vote for you. It just moves this project further through the process. And everybody wants to talk about upholding the zoning and the new zoning and you know, why are you making new zoning? You're not making new zoning. One of the things that the town council did not do was remove the regulatory agreement process from the Hyannis Harbor District or any of the other districts in the GIZ. It is a tool within the zoning. It's being appropriately applied here. You're not creating new zoning. And as far as going back to the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission, the only change in the building was to reduce each building by 1 floor and eliminate 5 units. Other than that, it's the exact same building that they approved. So most of this we've heard time and again. Regulatory agreements are a tool. If you're thinking it's being applied appropriately here, we ask that you move it forward to the town council, and we ask that we take a vote tonight.
Thank you, Attorney Kenny. And I will note that members of the public do not have the opportunity to respond to Attorney Kenny. Members of the public only have 1 chance to speak this evening. Mr. Ojala, I see your hand raised.
Yes, if I could just reflect a little bit on this project. When you talk about the view in the open space, a matter which was barely discussed, but we should remember that West Parcel had a strip motel, 30-unit motel on it very recently. It was only demolished when Mr. Bornstein bought it in the early 1990s. Paved parking in a strip motel, very unsightly and used a lot of space up. The eastern one had the big swimming pool out front with the Lewis Bay Marina and condominium, that complex on there. So it was a huge structure in its day. It had a big deck out front and was quite different. And it's kind of a unique property in that sense that both were highly developed with housing in the past. And so it's not like this is a green park where we're coming in and changing something. And a real reason that this density is so high is that Mr. Bornstein has come up with a very innovative process. By tucking that parking underground, he's really allowed himself to have a little bit more development over it. Yes, it's expensive, but it gets those cars out of the rain. Any oil leaks go through an oil water separator, is protected. The basement of that is 21 feet above sea level, way above sea level rise for the foreseeable future, and any concerns whatsoever. We're up on a pretty good hill here, and it's a very safe design. So it takes in. I'm also the engineer for the hospital, and yes, we did take into some coastal resiliency concerns there and built everything up. But that's just forward thinking. This is, I would say, even higher than the hospital due to the topography. And so hopefully we would be kind of rewarded for coming up with an innovative and a good system. Yes, it's 2 more stories than is allowed by zoning, but it's a very attractive design. We think it fits very nicely with the harbor front. It'll be a nice addition. It's back. Mr. Kirker has buildings that are proposed in front of it that are lower. We have a view easement over it, but it's back a little bit. It's a few feet less than the height of the greenery. We think it's a little bit forward, so it'll appear a bit higher, but it's very much in scale with some of the other buildings there. And with the growth incentive zone or the ability to do these regulatory agreements, it is just the way that it is in Barnstable that you can negotiate, and we're getting extra affordable units in the heart of Hyannis, easy walking to some of the shops, and they can certainly stroll down here and look at the water in any of the numerous parks. So that's, we think the additional offsets the fact that they're not waterfront. Again, we have some open areas on the site, and again, down front is a public way right down to the water where the boats are parked, and anybody can walk there. We're pulling all the overhead underground and improving a view quarter down the center. So for a number of reasons, we think it's a good project. The historic, who is charged with the massing, if you look at their regulations and so forth, absolutely approved this project. It was just 1 story higher when the 4-to-1 vote in favor went through. So we've come down the exact same ridge, 1 level. So boy, I don't think we should have to go back to that commission. It's additional red tape. Mr. Bornstein's trying to bring through a signature project. And, we hope that we could move forward to the next level. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Odola. Appreciate those comments. And at this time, we would look to close the public hearing. We have a motion.
I would like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Steve. A second.
This is Mary. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mary. And all those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robshaw, votes aye. Public meeting is closed. And at this time, we will go to board deliberation. And Attorney Kenny, did you have anything else? I saw you unmuted. Do you have anything else to add before we deliberate?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No.
Okay, appreciate that. So board deliberation, discuss, kind of where you stand and thoughts, what got us to this point. I'm going to go in the same order. So Bob, lead it off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please bear with me. I have a fairly extensive list of issues that we've been kicking around, and I have some thoughts and conclusions on those. And I think it's important to make the record complete before we finally vote on the issue.
Take as much time as you need.
Well, cut me off anytime you want. The applicant here is seeking a huge number of zoning waivers to construct these buildings. And we've heard extensive public comment and debate on the merits or lack of merits, depending on the perspective of the application. Following our December 12th meeting, I compiled a written list of all the arguments, both pro and con, which have been expressed at the various meetings, as well as the written comments which we received up through. And I updated them, in fact, as late as this afternoon to make sure I'd accounted for everything. I then set out to evaluate all the arguments, and throughout that analysis back since the fall, I've returned at least 3 times to the site to walk through the neighborhood to evaluate these issues after we conducted the crane test. Now, I made extensive comments about the proposal, particularly at the August 8th and December 12th meetings, as well as October 24th. And I'm going to try not to repeat those comments because they're all in the record. The most significant waiver in my mind is the height of these 2 buildings. Under the most recent proposal, each building is 4.5 stories with a height of 62.38 feet and 59.98 feet, respectively, for 115 School Street and 110 School Street. These buildings unquestionably would be very tall. If approved, the building located at 115 School Street would become the tallest residential building in the town of Barnstable, and one of the tallest occupied buildings in the entire town, along with Town Hall, Cape Cod Hospital, and the Lewis Bay condominiums. When I say occupied buildings, I'm intentionally excluding things like power lines, cell phone and internet transmission towers, church steeples, and other non-occupied types of structures. The building at 110 School Street would be the 3rd highest residential building in the town of Barnstable. Now, we conducted a crane test several months ago to evaluate the height of the proposed condo buildings. The crane test demonstrated that the buildings will, in fact, be very high. During the crane test, the planning department staff member drove me over to the other side of the harbor to view the project site from that vantage point. We viewed the project site with the crane test in place from the end of Channel Point Road off of Ocean Street, 1 street south of the Highline Ferry Terminal near the Hyannis Harbor Light. From that vantage point, the top floor of the Lewis Bay condominium building at the corner of Lewis Bay Road and South Street was visible over the top of the crane test. Now, I made extensive comments on December 12th about the arguments presented about the tractor trailer trucks, the lost tourists, the house cleaners, the delivery services, the trash pickup trucks. I'm not going to repeat those here except to reaffirm that all those arguments are not affected by the height of the building. The situation will be exactly the same with regard to all those issues, whether the buildings were 2 stories built as a matter of right or 4.5 stories built by waiver. Acceptance of all those arguments would mean that no building could be built on at least one of the lots at 110 or 115 School Street. Now, in addition to the height of the buildings, witnesses have raised issues about the amount of parking provided in the project. Witnesses have argued that 2 parking spots on site for each unit is insufficient, that residents will have numerous guests who will bring additional cars for which there are no spaces, and those cars will trespass in adjacent residential parking areas and or cause unsafe obstructions on the streets. I believe that 2 on-site parking spots per unit is adequate for this development. Purchasers are going to be buying 2 or 3 bedroom condos in a mid-rise building on the waterfront. Purchasers have to understand they're not buying a single-family house on 2 acres of land. If they can't live with that, they shouldn't buy a condo at this location. If they want to park 3, 4, or 5 cars, they should purchase that single-family house on a big lot somewhere else. If they insist on bringing 3, 4, 5, or more vehicles to their condo in this development, they have to understand that they have to arrange to park those cars legally somewhere else off-site. If they insist on bringing more than 2 cars to the location and don't arrange to park those additional cars off-site legally, then those additional cars will be ticketed and towed. And they'll have to pay towing fees and impound lot fees and parking fines. And if they can't live with that, they should buy elsewhere. The developer is assuming the risk that these units will not sell because there's only 2 parking units per unit. And if their clients violate that, their cars are going to be towed. Now, 3 subzones of the Hyannis Village zone come together essentially right at this site. Under the zoning ordinance, which was in effect at the time of the application, this location was in the Harbor District, HD. Just a short distance across South Street begins the Medical Service District, and to the northwest was the Hyannis Village Business District. Under the zoning approved by the Town Council last month and is now in effect, the building site also would be in the Hyannis Harbor District, now designated HH. Directly north of South Street would become the Hyannis Downtown Village District, designated DV. The Medical Services District is renamed as the Downtown Harbor District, DH, and is limited to the area east of Lewis Bay Road. The maximum number of stories for a residential development at 110 and 115 School Street is 2.5 stories under both the old and the new zoning ordinances. The maximum height for a residential building at this site is 35 feet under both the old and the new zoning ordinances. Here, the applicant is seeking approval for 62.38 feet and 59.98 feet, respectively. Now, numerous people have given me credit for saying that what we do here with regard to this project will set a precedent for future development in this area. I was somewhat surprised when I heard that because I was pretty sure I had not used the word precedent for a variety of reasons, one of which is that it has a specific legal meaning which is not applicable here. So I went back and watched the videos of each meeting where this application has been discussed to see what I actually did say. And what I said several times, and I'm going to say again tonight, is that what we do with this project will set the tone for future development in the east end of Hyannis. And that what we do not do with regard to this project also will set the tone for future development in this area. And I've also said that whatever we do or don't do in this project will be the cornerstone or the anchor for development in the east end of Hyannis. However, more important than what I did or did not say, to the extent there is a precedent with development in the Hyannis Harbor District and in this neighborhood, that precedent was set over a decade ago with the greenery development at the corner of South Street and Lewis Bay Road, and the Hyannis Harbor Hotel Addition development on Ocean Street. The Hyannis Harbor Hotel Addition was and is in the Harbor District and was limited by zoning ordinance to 2.5 stories with a maximum height of 35 feet. It was built in 2014, however, with 4 stories and a peaked roof and a height of 44 feet, pursuant to a regulatory agreement which granted waivers for the number of stories and the maximum height. The Lewis Bay condominiums at the corner of South Street and Lewis Bay Road would have been in the Hyannis Harbor District, but for the fact that there was an existing building at that location, which would have been non-conforming and non-compatible with the rest of the zoning at this end of South Street. As a result, the zoning map drew a line around that building site and included it in the Medical Services District, MS, instead of the Hyannis Harbor District, like all the other house lots abutting the north side of South Street. Under the old zoning map, every single house lot abutting the north side of South Street, from Lewis Bay Road west to a location west of the intersection of Ocean Street, Old Colony, and South Street, including the artist shanties adjacent to the town hall, was in the Harbor District, except for the Lewis Bay condominiums. The Greenery/Lewis Bay condominium project was built pursuant to a 2007 developmental agreement, which allowed for the, perhaps it was a regulatory agreement, excuse me, which allowed for the addition of a fourth floor to the existing structure and a maximum height of 61 feet, as long as the greater height included stairways and elevators. In addition, the development agreement or regulatory agreement called for the construction of 2 residential structures between the current Lewis Bay condominiums and School Street. And those 2 lots now are open air parking lots for the Lewis Bay condominiums. So to the extent that there's been any precedent set for development in this area, it's already been set by the Greenery project at 4 stories with peaks and a maximum height of 61 feet, and the Hyannis Harbor Hotel Edition at 4 stories with peaks and a height of 44 feet. Now, the town of Barnstable has grown from approximately 10,500 full-time residents in 1950 to 19,000 full-time residents in 1970 to 49,000 full-time residents in 2022. And it became a city in 1989 after 350 years as a town. The town of Barnstable is going to continue to grow for the next 30 years and longer. We're already at the point where restaurants and retail businesses can't get sufficient employees to keep their businesses open normal hours or staff those businesses at a level to provide the desirable level of services. The people who would work in our restaurants and retail business can't afford to live here, either in Barnstable or reasonable commuting distance to Barnstable. And it isn't only restaurant and retail workers. Our policemen and firemen, school teachers and paraeducators, medical support personnel like nurses' aides, medical assistants, dental hygienists, phlebotomists, x-ray technicians, and nurses early in their careers, or young plumbers, electricians, and carpenters, or even entry-level assistant district attorneys or public defenders can't afford to live here. If my son, who works in public schools in another state, were to accept the exact same position here for the Barnstable Public Schools, he couldn't afford to live here unless he lived in our house for either no rent or a nominal rent. If we can't get the workers necessary to support our businesses due to the inability to find housing in Barnstable or a reasonable commuting distance to Barnstable, our businesses will not be able to survive. And if our businesses can't survive, they'll close. And if businesses close, Barnstable, as we know it, will die. Now, much of this growth is likely to happen in the east end of Hyannis. There currently are large areas of open-air parking spots in the east end of Hyannis, between the ocean and Main Street, and between Old Colony and the Yarmouthtown line. Currently, 115 School Street is an unused and undeveloped vacant lot. And as Mr. Ojala mentioned earlier this evening, it has been that way since the destruction of that hotel some years ago. 110 School Street includes the Dockside residence, which is open seasonally between June and September on one half of the lot, and the remainder of the lot is used as a parking lot for the restaurant when the Dockside is open. During the months in which the Dockside is not open, 110 School Street is a closed business, with most of the lot being used as an unused vacant lot. And earlier tonight, Mr. Kenny, I believe, said that Mr. Bornstein wants to close down the Dockside building because of problems they're having with a variety of issues at that spot. The cost of land, and more importantly, the opportunity cost arising from non-productive or inefficient use of land, should discourage or preclude excessive open-air parking in the Hyannis Harbor District and the Downtown Village District. Increased amounts of open-air parking and/or vacant lots in the Harbor District is not the highest and best use, nor an effective or efficient use of the land. We should be reducing our parking footprint in the Hyannis Harbor District and the Downtown Hyannis Main Street District, not increasing it. We need to figure out how to reduce our parking footprint here and in the Main Street corridor without decreasing our parking capacity. Now, I returned to the area of 110 and 115 School Street several times after the crane test to do a walking tour. Many of us have a chance to drive through this part of South Street virtually every day. Relatively few people, however, take much of an opportunity, I think, to walk through that neighborhood on a regular basis. We've had discussions about the view that will be taken away if these buildings are built. So I had a chance to stand in the middle of School Street at South Street and look south through the 110 and 115 School Street corridors. I was struck by how little I could see from the corner of South Street and School Street. On the east side, the Dockside Restaurant building blocks almost all of the view. On the west side, a stand of bushes and trees at the south property line, combined with the roof line of the Steamship Authority building, blocked any view past the end of the parking lot. When I say parking lot, I mean the unimproved vacant lot at 115. Looking straight down School Street across the water, in the distance, I could see a row of houses on Bayshore Road across the Inner Harbor. The view from the peak of the hill at approximately 67 School Street allowed a view of more water between the foot of School Street and the houses on Bayshore, but not a greater view from side to side. Now, this view would be the same if the application is approved as it is now. It's a straight shot southbound down School Street with no visual obstructions between the two sides of the streets. There simply is no panoramic view of Hyannis Harbor from the intersection of South Street and School Streets with the property in its current configuration. If you walk past the southern property line of 110 and 115 School Street and stand in the middle of School Street, you then will get a better view of the harbor. If this approval were approved, you could walk to this exact same place on School Street or to the bottom of the street at the dock and get the same view. I also had an opportunity to walk to the south end of Lewis Bay Road into the parking lot for the Guy Brown public boat ramp and look northward back towards School and South Street to see what the view is like coming northbound into the Inner Harbor. While Hyannis Harbor is not overly large, it does have two distinct sides, each of which has its own appearance and character. The west side of the harbor is both park-like and tourist-oriented. The west side of the Inner Harbor is anchored by Asselton Park, with which most Barnstable residents are familiar. It hosts the 4th of July fireworks and the concert, the boat parade, and is high-quality open space, park space for the public's use. Immediately to the east on South Street is the Hyannis Maritime Museum. Going south from Asselton Park on Ocean Street, on the harbor side, is a parking lot, a gift shop, and Spanky's Clam Bar. South of Spanky's is a park-like setting with 8 artist shanties where local artists display their works several months of the year, along with a public comfort station. To the immediate south is the docking space for the Highline Ferry and its terminal, along with a small public parking lot. The opposite side of Ocean Street is filled with hotels and restaurants. The Black Cat restaurant is open. It was opposite the artist shanties, with hotels to both north and south. The eastern side of this part of the harbor is anchored by Baxter's Restaurant and a public dock at the end of Pleasant Street. South of the Highline Terminal on Ocean Street is a residential neighborhood in which the backyards of houses on Channel Point Road form the southern border of the Inner Harbor on the west side. Now, on the eastern side of the Inner Harbor, It begins with the entry road for the Steamship Authority ferry. The entry road is a large, completely paved area for cars and trucks to line up waiting to enter the ferry. Immediately to the east of the entry lot is the Steamship Authority terminal between the entry lot and the south end of School Street. Immediately east of the Steamship Authority are 115 and 110 School Street. To the east of this property is a single-family house followed by the Anchor Inn at the southwest corner of the intersection of South Street and Lewis Bay. South of the Anchor Inn on the east side of the street is the Hyannis Marina and boat repair and storage facilities. And south of the marina are single-family houses which form the southeastern side of the inner harbor. Now, I wouldn't characterize this side of the harbor as industrial, as some people have during this hearing, but it clearly is a working side of the harbor. Lewis Bay, south of the inner harbor, is primarily residential, along with Veterans Park and the Hyannis Yacht Club on Ocean Street at the southwestern side of the harbor. Coming into the inner harbor on the water, on the west side of the inner harbor, a visitor is greeted by Asselton Park, Bismore Park with the artist shanties, the back of the Maritime Museum, the docking area for the Highline Ferry, and Baxter's Restaurant and the public dock. On the eastern side of the inner harbor, a visitor is greeted by the Steamship Authority parking lot, loading zone, and dock, the parking lot for the Hyannis Marina at the base of the hill at 110 and 115 School Street, the back of the Dockside Restaurant at the top of that hill, and the back of the Anchor Inn Motel. To the right of the Anchor Inn is a small public parking lot for the Guy Brown public boat ramp. While during the summer season, there were boats moored in the marina at the foot of School Street Hill, there are no boats moored there during the off-season. Either way, in my opinion, the view coming into this portion of the inner harbor is not particularly attractive. Most of the visitors coming into the harbor are on either the Steamship Authority ferry or the Highline ferry. Most of the people coming into the harbor by ferry from the islands have gone out of the inner harbor on one of those ferries. The property at 115 School Street is unproductive and has been inefficiently used for years. The property at 110 School Street is unproductive most of the year and has been used very inefficiently for some time. The current and past uses are not their highest and best use. They present an unattractive streetscape. The opportunity cost of leaving these properties underutilized is very high. Constructing high-end condominiums or a high-end restaurant or high-end medical and professional offices or some other high-end environmentally clean business would cause the east end to develop in one way. Leaving these parcels as primarily unimproved vacant lots with a seasonal business on one of those lots will cause the east end to develop in a very different way. These properties are right at the transition of the neighborhood. The zoning classification changes to the downtown village district just by crossing the street. There's a 61-foot tall, 4+ story condo building with a huge open-air parking lot diagonally across the street, and the Cape Cod Hospital with a mid-rise tower and its new 4+ story tower under construction is immediately adjacent to the intersection of South Street and Lewis Bay Road. Now, if this were a binary choice, meaning we had to choose between approving this project and having the proposed buildings on this site for 100 years or more on the one hand, or leaving these two properties in their current condition permanently on the other hand, excuse me, I would vote to approve the current proposal. It's not a binary choice, however. A third alternative would be to not approve the current application and attempt to fill the properties with a different project more in line with the zoning and character of the harbor. Now, let me be clear. If this proposal were located on the other side of the harbor, in the area between Asselton Park and Spanky's Clam Shack, and between Ocean Street and the water, under no circumstances would I vote to approve this project. Now, having gone through this analysis, I tried to figure out what I would put at this location if I were making the urban design, and if cost were not a factor. I conducted a fairly traditional alternative course of action analysis. Now, I'm not going to bore you with that analysis, except to say that among the things I considered, in addition to 2 high-end condominium buildings, were a high-end restaurant, a high-end medical, dental, professional office building, a high-end hotel, 2 rows of attractive high-end townhouses, 2.5 stories tall, 1,500 to 1,800 square feet apiece, 1 row on each of the 2 lots, and also 2 single-family houses, 1 on each lot. If I were making the urban design with cost not being a factor, my conclusion is that the highest and best use for these 2 parcels would be 2 condominium buildings, each 2.5 stories tall, with approximately 16 2- or 3-bedroom apartments with underground parking. Of course, cost is a factor. So, Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time. I'd like to hear the thoughts from the other board members.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bob. That was thorough and much needed. It really laid everything out. I appreciate you putting, obviously, a lot of time into that. So thank you. Moving along to Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Bob, you are a tough act to follow. I have given this a lot of thought and tried to kind of break it down into pieces from all the previous meetings. We've had a lot of different discussions and gone down a lot of different paths, and we seem to be coming to the same 3 or 4 major points of concern and discussion and work through. I just wanted to ask, can I ask questions of staff if we were in closed deliberations, or is that not?
No, absolutely. Staff and applicant, feel free.
So I wanted to ask staff just a procedural question that for these regulatory agreements, we are acting not as a regulatory body, but as an advisory body to the town council, and with recommendations with amendments, or to not recommend this project. And I wanted to know if this goes to town council with our recommendation or without our recommendation. Does it put a higher bar for town council to be able to work through the regulatory agreement, to approve it, to not approve it? Do they need a simple majority, or do they need a full majority, one way or the other? That's my first question.
Thank you, Tim. Just a clarification. So the planning board is acting as a body to recommend to the town manager the execution of a regulatory agreement. The next step, as it's been historically done, is if the planning board provides a recommendation, then it goes to town council for consideration. So again, the planning board is offering up a recommendation. Then separately, if the planning board does offer a recommendation, town council shall consider a recommendation. Both of those recommendations go to the town manager, and ultimately it's town manager's signature. In the regulatory ordinance, if there are waivers requested, which this one clearly does, it is a 2/3 vote of the council. It remains a majority vote of the planning board. And there is no difference for voting for town council based on whether the board recommends. It simply will move forward if the board recommends.
Great, thank you. So to break it down, that if this board was to vote to not recommend the project, it would go to the town manager, who would then not be able to bring it to the town council, or
No, so what would occur if the planning board decides to not recommend, it does not move forward. That's how its past practice has been in interpreting this ordinance. If the board recommends or recommends with amendments, then it would give the town council the ability to consider this regulatory agreement.
Okay, and then for instances, I think, I don't know if it was in 2022 or if it was in 2021, I think there was recently another regular agreement that went to town council with this board's approval that was overturned at town council. Or sorry, went to town manager who brought to town council, and then the town council did not end up going forward and approving that. And when they do that, it does take a 2/3 majority to go against what this board would have recommended.
So again, it is essentially two separate acts. So the planning board is providing whether or not to recommend. And if the planning board does, then it goes to town council. The town council then decide or will review and determine whether or not they will recommend or not to recommend execution of the regulatory agreement. It's 2/3 if waivers are required. So for this one, 2/3 would be required to recommend or not to recommend to the town manager. So town manager is the third step in the process.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for clarifying. And that actually makes it a tougher decision for myself. I greatly appreciated Bob's analysis and kind of highlights of the major areas of concern. And what it boils down to for me is the height and setting the tone for the development in that area of Hyannis. And just kind of the overall concerns of congestion. But I am acutely aware of the need to promote smart development in this town, and also our severe need of all types of housing, especially affordable housing, but mixed housing types, you know, from the high end, especially there's a large demand for condos. I think for the ability for people to sell their full-time properties to a family and be able to age up to a condo, but also workforce housing and the affordable housing that this project would bring. This past weekend, I was in Pine Hills in Plymouth, which has a lot of different mixed developments in a close area, single family homes, townhomes, condos, multi-story apartment buildings, restaurants. And there's a new 4-story building located right next to some of the restaurants in there. And I stood back, we were going to a restaurant there, and I stood back and I looked at that 4-story building for about 5 minutes and just kind of took in the impact of the height, you know, from grade and something of that mass and size. And, you know, I was thinking about 110 and 115 School Street. And at the end of the day, a 4.5-story building, I do not think would fit in the area. And I think it is not a great area to have this in the Hyannis Harbor district, where the entire goal of the zoning was to have a lower height to promote the public viewing of the harbor. And I think that the exceptions that could be made in this process for a regulatory agreement can be warranted for a 4-story building in this part of Hyannis, but I'm not sure that this is the exact property for it. And I'm also not sure that the amount of waivers requested, especially around that height and the density on this parcel, is justifiable for 5 total off-site housing units. Per the inclusionary affordable zoning, 3 would be required on site of like construction, compatible design, in appearance. And I think trading for units off-site that, although 3 bedrooms, just frankly, I don't think are even with the units that are going to be built for development for market rate at this site. And I think that 2 additional units on top of what is required off-site, I do not think the math works. The get is not as good as the what we're being given. So that is all. I'm very interested to hear what the other board members think, but it is a very tough for me to be able to approve this as is. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. And Steve?
Thank you, Steve. And Bob, I appreciate your thorough top to bottom analysis of really the entire project and the entire process for us. I think that was incredibly helpful for everybody. I'm kind of look at this in many different ways. First of all, I always like to remind people we're volunteers. We've kind of accepted the responsibility, and Ms. Dagwan mentioned she may have, selected some of us to be on the planning board, which 100% appreciate her dedication, time, and service, and her, time and commitment to the town of Barnstable and Hyannis probably in particular. But again, we're volunteers. We've been asked to do this. We've been given a tool. The regulatory agreement is a tool specifically for these types of arrangements. When you start to think about the benefits, clearly housing is important. Housing for people that A, needed affordable, and B, needed more workforce. To think about putting housing that is specifically, say, affordable on this location specifically, that to me doesn't make sense at all. Not only the economics of it, but how do we, or how does the town select, the fortunate 2 or 3 people that are going to have, a view just due to the fact that they were, maybe pulled out of a lottery ultimately. That doesn't really sit well with me, just in terms of how to make this something that benefits more people. And I think the number of offsite units clearly is a very positive step in the right direction. And I concur with Bob. My daughter is going to college right now, back to college, I should say, to be a school teacher. And it's incredibly difficult to find housing for folks in that situation. The building itself, and I kind of maybe point back to Ms. Dagwan again, is she's been working with the town for many, many years, and mentioned that the prior iteration, she was a cheerleader for this project, if I'm characterizing her statement, that she was a cheerleader for a prior project. I couldn't disagree more. I've been on the planning board for 6+ years. Mary, at this point, is the senior planning board member with the most seniority. But I was involved in the last iteration. I was so against it just due to the fact that its appearance was just completely against what I view as something appropriate for the location and for the town of Barnstable. And the meetings and the way that these things have been discussed, they have been on Zoom. We've unfortunately hadn't had an opportunity for a lot of public in-person meetings, but to Mr. Julius's concerns, threatening a lawsuit for people who are volunteering and doing a job that we've been asked to do, that's fine. I don't really put any weight in that, but what I do put weight in is our own thoughtful considerations of what we think this project may do in terms of benefits. And I think, in this day and age, there used to be a time where you could either agree, disagree, or agree to disagree. And I think that's something that we need to get back to. Ms. Penn and I have, I wouldn't say butt heads because I don't think it's that, but I will say that anytime that she has spoken, pretty much takes the opposite side of what I may come out with in terms of my conclusions. She's the co-chair for the local comprehensive plan. I was elected chair. I nominated her to be co-chair. We hold many different opinions. I don't dislike her because she may have a differing opinion. I value those opinions, and we can agree to disagree, and I hope she feels the same way. With that said, I think many of the public comments are very emotional. I understand that. But I will say I've been in and around coming to Cape Cod, Hyannis for 40 years. And that site, in my opinion, is one of the biggest eyesores in the entire town of Barnstable. People that, as Bob mentioned, are looking for a view. We have spectacular public land with the two parks mentioned right along the waterside that I think could be used significantly more probably than they are now. And I think that's a great opportunity for the town to be able to continue to grow public space and utilization of our public space. To clarify, I agree entirely. When you come down School Street and kind of look down to the harbor, there really is no view. We're not losing anything. And when I look at this, I think of, what is this doing for the town? How are we improving the town? I think this improves the town dramatically by elevating our level. Someone mentioned earlier, people come and go through the harbor and they want to get out of Hyannis as quick as possible. Well, when you look at sites like this that have been in existence for as long as they have been in such an unsightly manner, granted, Mr. Bornstein's been the owner for a number of years, and clearly he's made efforts throughout the years to try to improve these. And I think for whatever reason, he has struck out on previous opportunities, just primarily due to the design. And I think the amount of effort, the amount of design considerations that have gone into this site have brought this plan to a point where it's not perfect for everyone. We can agree and disagree on that, but I don't think that it's a horrible plan. And I think we have to make some considerations, whether you agree that a regulatory agreement is appropriate. It's a tool that we have. It's a tool that we're using in this scenario. As far as how it's viewed going forward and what precedent it sets, whether that's the appropriate word or not, the way I view this is that we've got a very narrow scenario where anything that's going to be built, and this is my opinion, it may or may not be applicable to other folks' opinion, but as you're facing the harbor, everything to the left that would be heading kind of easterly towards the hospital, those buildings seem to me to be the ones that more than likely in the future would be probably subject to some sort of development that may also kind of contribute to additional housing, maybe at this level. I think clearly as you move further down to the west side of South Street, with the park and the museum, it's very unlikely the town's going to allow public land to be converted into housing and condominiums. I don't see that ever happening. So from an opportunity standpoint, I think it's really important for the town to do something different. There has been no development of significance to this degree that provides a high-end experience and something when you enter that harbor, and I have a boat, I frequent that harbor on a regular basis in the summer. It's not an attractive harbor. There's a very beautiful lighthouse as you pass, coming around into the inner harbor. The outer harbor is very picturesque and beautiful, but as you enter the harbor itself, the main thing that you see, and anyone with a boat can attest to this, is you see a massive docking station for the Steamship Authority boats. That's primarily what you see. When a boat is there, it doesn't look as bad. When there's no boat present, when there's no Steamship Authority boat present, it's a vacant hole with a giant, bulkhead and docking station. There's really nothing overly active of that portion of the harbor. Certainly as you get a little bit closer, as you go towards, Spanky's and in that area where the artists' shacks are, clearly that becomes a lot more picturesque. But by and large, as you enter from the harbor, what you see primarily is the Greenery Building, which is a nice landmark, and it does stand out. And I think this building will complement that in a much improved fashion for the overall. And from an access standpoint, I think anyone that has cause to kind of be on that and they want to walk down that street now, it's going to be a lot more engaging. It's going to be a lot more appealing to the public for people to walk down on either side of the newly created walk that will allow people to really get inquisitive and maybe walk down there, where I would say in the past, when you look down at that space right now, when you see 2 vacant parking lots in a building that, in my opinion, probably should have been raised several years ago. It doesn't seem to be an attractive building to look at. There, it's a spectacular view, and I think having an opportunity for people maybe to take advantage of that would be beneficial. So with that in mind, I am in favor of it. I think it does provide much needed boost, and I think the problems that exist in Hyannis are not going away by building more affordable housing and by not encouraging people to spend money here. I think we need to do something different. I think we need to get a little more creative and spend some money in the town of Hyannis and Barnstable to make it a better place. And I do think that this is going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Moving along to Mary.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks to my fellow board members so far. I think the comments that you've made are really helpful, I think, not only for the board, but also for the general public. Personally, for me, I am someone who feels that the zoning that's been put in place is there for a reason. And the number of variances that are being requested for this particular project is not something that I'm in favor of. So because of the number of variances, and obviously I would say that the town is not in favor of it as well, since the zoning has been put in place to avoid something of this kind of a development. I would love to see the facility, both sides of that street, developed into something more manageable. I don't necessarily have a solution for that, but something that fits with the culture and the layout of that particular area that would be supportive of that current community. So for me, I am not in favor of this regulatory agreement as it sits. Thanks, Steve.
You got it. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. And Michael?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I had a chance and opportunity to review all the documentations that was sent to us. And also I had the opportunity to go back and read all the notes that I have from our previous meeting. As we all know, this has been going on since last year. After hearing the public and also some of my colleagues, I would have to say that it is a beautiful project. Yeah, we cannot disagree with that. I agree with what Steve had said. We can always agree to disagree. However, this is my opinion, and the public opinion is one of the things that really resonate a lot to my decision on this project. So with that being said, I am not in favor with this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. And Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must say that I'll just try to capture a lot of what's been said. I think one thing is very clear. We don't take this decision lightly. What we base our decision on is hopefully for the greater good of our community in the town of Barnstable. And I think that something that Bob said really hits on that, and that is that I think that there are alternatives to what is proposed currently. That said, it's a lovely concept. It's aesthetically pleasing. It's a signature legacy project. It will sit on a commanding promontory overlooking Hyannis Harbor. As we say in DOD, terrain can be a force multiplier. And in this case, the structure's features, its attributes, its characteristics are emphasized by the site. So an already imposing edifice going to be made more so perched up on a high point like that. So as my colleague Steve Costello says, that said, there is a reason the height limit in the Harbor District zone is 2.5 stories. Hyannis came into being because of its harbor. It wasn't a whistle stop on the railroad that grew into a hamlet. The railroad came later. It wasn't developed by people exploring up and down the Cape. Harbor was and quite frankly is the source of its development, is the core, the essence of what Hyannis is, and continues to be with all that's grown up around it. So we have to ask ourselves, how does this project help preserve and enhance the history of the harbor, its place in the community, provide development which maintains the fabric, the texture of the village of Hyannis, not the city of Hyannis? As I said, this is an impressive project, and I would like to see it built in a place zoned for the scale, the mass, the density that is proposed, not the current site. If completed as proposed, it will be an upscale compound that will effectively, in my opinion, close off access to the harbor. Access in terms of site, access in terms of physical availability, in terms of what planners call the human connection with our surroundings. I submit that School Street will, for all intents and purposes, will become a driveway for the two complexes on either side. As one of the folks in one of our later hearings said, the great view from the dockside porch will be gone. And with all due respect to Bob, I don't think I'll be standing in the middle of School Street evaluating the view. I'm really talking about the view from where the dockside is now. I think it is a little bit more panoramic than perhaps it was given credit. But the fact is that it will be gone, and only people that have in the future who will have that view will have paid large sums of money for it. Will truly be a $1 million view. This project will be strictly residential. There will be nothing for people to come to this area unless they have a condo there. No shops, no cafe, no restaurant. It's not like folks that get off the ferry or walk up South Street are going to feel that they can come onto the grounds of this upscale compound and have their lunch. It's exclusive, or it will feel exclusive. It's essentially one of its selling points, I imagine. Now, a regulatory agreement is supposed to entail a trade-off between the applicant and the town. There's a kind of quid pro quo. The developer gets waivers from having to comply with town development guidelines, and in return, contributes to the greater good of the community. This project asks for a bunch of waivers, which should give us pause in assessing its appropriateness. When I look at the list of benefits that's been presented, I see that, frankly, most of them ultimately will benefit the project and not the people of the Hyannis community. You're going to clean up the area and make it look nice because you're selling expensive places to live. There was and this was presented to us as benefits, and frankly, as the old cowboy once said, I was born at night, not last night. I've heard folks say that going forward with the project as proposed is better than what's there now. And I remember shortly after September 11th, the intelligence community heard from Congress, and what they said was, do something, even if it's wrong. We need to show the people we're doing something about this. And I feel we might be in danger of falling into that mindset. So I just would caution about that. My concern is that once it's done, it's done. There's no do-over, there's no replay. And I think there are alternatives that will been proposed currently that might be a better fit for this site. And I think Bob has touched on some of them, so I'm not going to go over that. So in summary, Mr. Chair, I think we have a our duty is to help shape responsibly for the reasons outlined above, and to responsibly shape future development in and around the harbor and throughout the town of Barnstable. I recommend disapproval of the current proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate that. And I'll finish it off. I am in favor of the project and the regulatory agreement as written. You know, again, the key talking points, well, for me, you know, just to lead off, you know, it is a tired site. It is an eyesore. And personally, I'd love to see that site develop in one way or another. And I believe that this is a good proposal and the right way to go. For me, I'm okay with the height, only because of some of the other buildings around town. And without going into, you know, specifics and detail, Bob touched on a lot of that, specifically the greenery, which was also a regulatory agreement, and very, very close proximity to this site. You know, I really don't believe that what we do here sets a precedent for other properties. I think every property stand on its own. And I'll also mention that there are other properties on the south side of South Street that are waterfront, meaning they abut the water. This is not a waterfront property. It has been noted as a waterfront property many times throughout these meetings. And I just wanted to state that it is not. It has water views, but the steamship authority and the dockside marina, those are technically the waterfront properties on that street. In my opinion, the waiver for historic is appropriate. A certificate of appropriateness was issued by that board. And since then, the design is the same, except that the story is, the building is one story less. So the impact is reduced. So again, I'm in favor of that waiver. For me, the biggest thing is affordables. And I just wanted to hit on this because, you know, I really haven't seen the progress that I think we've all hoped for with affordable housing units, as well as housing in general. There's a housing crisis right now in Cape Cod, especially in the town of Barnstable. And I'd love to see us start to move that needle a little bit. Between 310 Barnstable Road and this project, we'd be seeing 59 new housing units coming online, 8 of which are affordable and 5 of which are 3 bedrooms. To me, that is massive. And, you know, to me, I would love to see that happen. And I'll finish with, you know, the highest and best use. I think this is such an important thing to talk about. I have no clue how to determine what is the highest and best use, but I have been reading a lot of definitions of it. And almost every one of those definitions I've read has noted financially feasible. It's something that we have to think about. We all know how much, you know, cost of goods has gone up in the past 2 years. The cost of construction is astronomical. And just looking at this proposal and building anything there, you know, the developer has to make sure that it's financially feasible. So I'm sure there's calculations that go into that, as have been mentioned. And, you know, that's something to consider when considering highest and best use. There's pros and cons to every single one of these applications. I've been on the board for quite some time, and to date, I have not seen what I would call a perfect proposal. We have to weigh those pros and cons. For me, housing and affordable housing is very high on that pros list for me, and I'm putting a lot of weight behind that. So I think that's important. So that's all I have to say. And at this time, unless the board has anything, any final board comments before we look for a motion? Okay, Steve, take it away. Ready for a motion?
So, Steve, at this point, without having an actual vote, I would like to make a motion to recommend the execution of regulatory agreement 2022-002 Dockside Residence, 110 School Street and 115 School Street regulatory agreement to the town council.
Thank you, Steve. And Bob, all those in favor? Bob?
Bob, I think you're muted.
You need a second, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes, second.
what I was trying to say is we need a second. I'd be happy to do that if someone hasn't done it already.
Thank you very much. Bob has seconded, and all those in favor, Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with everything that all of my colleagues have said. I don't like the height of the buildings, and I'm disappointed that the proposal calls for only 5 off-site affordable units. I think it should be more. As I said at a previous meeting, there's no relationship, however, between the number of affordable units required in as of right development and the number of affordable units for a regulatory agreement. So despite the fact that I am disappointed by the lack of, by the small number of affordable units, to me, the worst case scenario that's been presented to us is to leave these 2 parcels the way they are. And I think the highest and best use would put these 2 buildings with 2.5 stories with fewer units. In my view, the downside to leaving them the way they are exceeds the downside of the excess height. Accordingly, I vote in favor.
Thank you, Bob. And Tim?
Nay.
Thank you, Tim. Steve?
I vote yes.
Thank you, Steve. Mary?
I vote no.
Thank you, Mary. Michael?
I vote no.
Thank you, Michael. Ray?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that I appreciate everything that we've gone through to get to this. And I'm proud of my colleagues, and I hope that I've carried my part of the burden on this. I vote no.
Thank you, Ray. And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes yes. At this time, because the no votes exceed the yes votes, we do need a second motion to not recommend the execution of RA 2022-002.
Mr. Chair, I will make that motion to not recommend the execution of RA 2022-002 Dockside Residence, 110 School Street and 115 School Street regulatory agreement to Town Council.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ray. And all those in favor? Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
No.
Mary?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes no. And that motion passes. Attorney Kenny, Mr. Bornstein, I appreciate all your work on this. I know it's been a long road. And I'd like to second what Ray said. Appreciate all the board's work on this and town staff as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the members of the planning board. It's been a long, long process. We really appreciate all the time and effort, your deliberations, your thoughtful comments. I'll just say I'm kind of heartbroken for the village of Hyannis. I thought this was a perfect project for the east end of Hyannis. And I think it's another missed opportunity and a long list of missed opportunities for downtown Hyannis, going all the way back to the 1960s. I'm very disappointed, but I respect your decision and really appreciate all the time and effort. As Mr. Costello said, recognize you're all volunteers, and it's another late night for you. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Attorney Kane. Appreciate that. Kate, you have the floor for an LCP update.
Thank you, Chair. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank and commend all members of the public who came out to our Bringing It Together workshops. We held a virtual session as well as an in-person and had a good turnout for both workshops. During those workshops, we presented on some of the key trends we've heard, really key trends our consultant has determined in establishing our existing conditions, as well as some of the key trends of public comment that we received as we've gone and visited all of our villages and several organizations through the public comment through this period over the last 5 or so months. So we reported out on existing conditions, public comment, and then we had really robust conversations about values, priorities, and some visions, getting some great feedback from the members of our public. So as far as the next step, the LCP committee will hold their next meeting Thursday, March 30th at 5:30 in person at Town Hall. That meeting, our consultant team will work with the committee to talk through some of the results that they obtained from those 2 workshops, what people agreed upon, some of the conflicting arguments for values, priorities, and visions for Barnstable, thinking about the next 10 or so years. And together we will work with the committee to establish a vision statement. So that vision statement, as well as the existing conditions, will be available for the public to review coming shortly after that local comprehensive planning committee meeting. The presentation from both of those workshops is available, and further information as well is available on the project website, barnstablelcp.com. And as always, staff is more than willing to talk through any questions, comments from members of the public. So thank you again for your continued support and feedback during this process to figure out the future for Barnstable over the next 10 years.
Well said, Kate. Appreciate that. We have no correspondence this week, and we have 2 sets of minutes to approve, starting with the February 13th, 2023 draft minutes. If we could have a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a question, point of fact. So I was not present for those, so I'm not sure I'm qualified to approve the minutes. I have read the minutes, but I was not there.
Yeah. If you've read them, you can vote on them.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, as long as you've read them and reviewed the material, you are eligible to vote on the minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So look for a motion on the February 13th minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Bob. And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Michael. And all those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Those minutes pass. And next up, get a motion to approve the February 27th, 2023 draft minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Steve. That was Steve on the second. And all those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Future meetings, March 27th and April 10th. Again, both of those are in person. We'll be going permanently to in person. I will not be present at the March 27th, and Bob will be running the show that night. So, and anybody have any comments? Board have any comments before we adjourn?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to Mr. Twist wielding the gavel.
Yes. Yep. He'll be leading the show, so get ready. All right, with that, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank
Second,
you, Bob. And a second?
second.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. All those in favor, Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.